What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Five Lights F1 podcast. We are coming off of the Vegas Grand Prix. So in this episode, I'm going to be kind of talking about the recap of the race, kind of what happened, because a lot happened, and my experience, because I was there. I've been at every single one of them so far. So we'll just hop straight into it, waste no time. We can get this thing over. You don't have to sit here and watch on your phone, computers, however much, or whatever you're watching on for too long, because I'll be pretty quick. So, Las Vegas Grand Prix. In my opinion, Las Vegas is one of the. It's a weird circuit. There's long straights. It's freezing cold at night, freezing cold temperatures, and that causes low grip. I know a lot of you are thinking it's Las Vegas. It's in the desert. It's not cold. It gets freezing in Las Vegas around that November time. Every year that I've been, all right, so the first time that I went to Vegas, I was not expecting it to be cold whatsoever. I packed nothing but short sleeves. I went to the race. It was the first year they did it there in 2023, and it was freezing. I froze. I froze all weekend. So the next year, I took long sleeves, and it was even colder than it was the previous year. This year, it was raining and everything, obviously, so made it even more cold. So that's the weather. It gets cold. It gets cold. I mean, it was in the 40s. It was near the 30s. It was near the high 30s, which for Vegas is pretty cold. And there, it's a different kind of cold. I don't understand it, but it feels way colder than like 40 degrees where I'm living. Anyways, the qualifying session, it was one of the more dramatic and fun qualifying sessions that we've had all year because nobody could really get two identical laps out of their tires because of the wet track. It was a super wet track and it was obviously a street circuit, which makes it even more weird. Um, you know, Super slippery. Like we saw everybody sliding around. Being there in person, the spray from the cars, it was insane. Like I've never seen it that bad before. It was pretty bad because I mean there was just puddles sitting in the middle of the street and the street drains were like kind of I don't know how they built it, but the street drains weren't really working properly because there was a good bit of water in the track. It wasn't your average little puddles, and I think you could tell that just based off of certain qualifying performances. And if you've seen the videos of the spray from the car, it's pretty obvious. But like, yeah, everybody was slipping and sliding around the whole time. All the drivers, when they got interviewed about it, they said it was probably the worst they've ever raced on. Everybody said it was stressful, except for I think it was Fernando said it was actually pretty fun. He said it was more fun than he expected, but everybody else wasn't really they weren't really having it. Um Lando finishes with a really good lap, two purple sectors to get the pole position. At that time we kind of thought the weekend was kind of wraps from there. We thought Lando would just kind of pull away like he's done in the past when he does qualify pole. Max at two, obviously. Carlos Sainz with a good qualifying. He finished P3 in quali. Oscar Piastri's struggles do continue, which he did pick up a little bit of race pace, not too much. Liam Lawson had a good qualifying as well, which was actually kind of surprising to me, and I was happy to see that. Liam Lawson qualified P6 on the wet track that a lot of even the veterans were struggling on. So, onto the race. We'll get into the actual race. So, let's just get into turn one. If you've watched the race, you know what I'm talking about. So off the line, Lando, he gets a pretty good jump. Lando gets a very solid jump, but he tries to go defensive. He makes a bold move across Verstappen, takes turn one way too wide, which drops him to P3. Lando, he's had his struggles specifically at turn ones at certain tracks, and at, I mean, we just continue to see him right here. Like I said, he tries to be defensive on Max, and I guess it just wasn't. It didn't work how he planned, obviously. I just think that he didn't really have a feel of the track like he thought he did. I think that the turn was a little bit more sharper than what he thought, and you could see that because he went very wide. He went really wide, which Verstappen also did force him wide, which is a good move by Verstappen. Just shows why he's such a good driver. So once Verstappen went ahead, kind of figured what was happening there. George Russell, he was sticking with him within like that 2 second mark of Max for a little bit there, but I mean, ultimately, Max's Red Bull with the clean air ahead of him and, the cars behind him having more dirty air. he just started to pull away. George's Mercedes didn't really have the pace. Later in the race, we saw Lando make a move on George and take P2. Again, the McLaren also didn't have the pace in the dirty air. So Max ended up finishing comfortably in P1. Really great drive and yet another masterclass from Max Verstappen, which we're kind of getting used to at this point, and I think it's kind of undeniable that he really is probably maybe one of the best of all time. I don't think it's debatable. So if we get into the mid pack was actually pretty good. Let's just say what a drive from Kimi Antonelli. P17 to a podium, even after receiving a 5 second penalty for an early start, which personally, I mean, I watched it a few times. I did. It didn't give him much of an advantage, but I mean, I guess the rules are the rules, so you have to. It was kind of questionable, but like I said, rules are the rules, and you have to abide by them. And that's what they did. So he did get a 5 second penalty from that. Super happy to see this because I've always been one of the big believers in Kimmy. You know, people often forget how young the kid is and how new the kid is. Like, he's very unexperienced. And I believe his ceiling is super high. I mean, just wait till he gets a few more years under his belt, really gets comfortable in F1 because I honestly believe that he's not even fully comfortable there yet. I believe that we're seeing the worst of Kimmy right now. And if that's true, then that's saying a lot because Kimmy's been very good down the stretch. You know, he's really starting to find his rhythm in F1. And I think next year, being that Mercedes will have one of the better cars on the grid to even begin the year, at least that's what the expectations are. I think Kimmy could be up there with he could be up there with some of the top guys in the championship standings as early as next year. If not next year, I'd say the year after, so 2027. Which by then, Newey and I've heard Christian Horner now will probably be with Aston Martin, and I've also heard that Charles Leclerc is close to signing with Aston Martin. So that'll be interesting. I do know that if the report that I did see was true, Charles will do a few races, like 3 to 4 races, I believe, at the beginning of 2026 with Ferrari. And if it doesn't go good, I believe that, according to this report, I don't know how true it is, that he will probably sign with Aston Martin and be with Adrian Newey and Christian Horner, which, like I said, be very interesting. But we do know that Lance Stroll will probably still be there. So that is still a question mark and upgradable to say the least. But anyways, back to the race. Lewis with also a good drive, P19 to P8. It was probably one of his better drives of the year, in my opinion. We saw a good midfield battle with Kimi, Charles, and Oscar. Charles was pushing that Ferrari as much as possible, and man, it's just such a bad car. I hate it. I hate it as a Ferrari supporter and a Charles Leclerc fan. It's not a good car. They asked him over the radio, told him to push. He said, "I'm pushing like an animal." So, I mean, he was giving it all it had, and it just didn't have that much. It didn't have that much horsepower, like you would hope so in a Ferrari. But anyway, this is where things do get interesting. So, podium ended up being Max P1, Lando P2, and George P3. And this year didn't, they didn't. This year they didn't drive him in the back of a Rolls Royce like for that little awkward ride to the Bellagio fountain like they have the past 2 years, where the three podium sitters are crammed in the back of the Rolls Royce. Well, this year it was a pink Lego Cadillac. Max and Lando, if you saw it, Max, Lando, and George, they were all having fun with that. They had the little Lego glasses on. They were wearing the little Lego glasses. Uh, yeah, but you know, to the race, seems like Lando is pulling away even more with the drivers' championship lead, and then we see the FIA announces a McLaren double disqualification for excessive wear on the rear skid planks, which pretty much means the car was running too low and the planks were they were worn down past the legal minimum from the track. And if you go back and watch the race, I saw a few clips about it. I was there, so I couldn't really watch it on TV. I still have to rewatch it. When the McLarens would drive by, you could see significantly more sparks from the back than all the other cars on the grid. I think it could have been. with how low they were sitting, and the rear skids were, like I said, I mean, just closer to the ground than the other cars and causing more sparks. But anyway, so McLaren does lose every point, and Max is right back in the mix. He always finds a way to do it. Always finds a way to do it somehow. Right back in the mix in the championship standings, tied with Oscar, which we'll get into that in a minute. But um, gets interesting for Qatar because I mean, when there's a championship battle, and it's very interesting again. It's a real battle, and could potentially go down to the very last race of the year in Abu Dhabi. So, I mean, we're at a point in the season where the Red Bull looks a lot quicker than these McLarens. McLaren, they're no longer the fastest car on the grid, like they were pretty much the whole half of the year. They're losing pace pretty quick. And another thing is, people hadn't really thought of this. They've been running, it seems like all year with this rear skid thing, or pretty much all year. They're gonna have to make some adjustments, and they're kind of in crunch time now. What if they can't figure this car out? What if they can't figure this car out before these next 2 weeks? Because we have a triple header. There's a sprint race too. I, this is getting interesting because, like I said, they've been losing pace already. Now, if you have to make a change like that, that's crucial. They're gonna have to figure something out quick. So it's no easy go for Lando anymore. But Lando is really. You could talk about how Oscar, or you could talk about how the McLaren team and Zach Brown have been favoring Lando. I think at this point we've gotten so out of stretch with that I believe Lando has proven that. I mean, he's made up for all those points that he got from that little Oscar situation. So I mean, he would still be in the lead anyway, unless McLaren really did do something to Oscar's car, like many are speculating. But I just don't see that happening. I mean, that's just not going to happen. This is a professional sport. They're not going to do something that stupid. They don't want Lando to win that bad. They just want somebody on the team to win. Yeah, Lando is probably. I mean, Lando's their poster boy, but still, I mean, it just makes no sense. That all that is just it's just talk because I mean that's just not happening. But Lando is in first with 390 points in the drivers' championship standings. Max and Oscar now tied at 366, only 24 points behind Lando. Pressure's on for McLaren. So winners, I would say Lewis. Winners for this weekend, I'd say Lewis and definitely Lewis, definitely Max, Kimmy. Yeah, that's really all I think of. Losers, Lance Stroll, obviously. Gabby Bortoleto, obviously. Liam Lawson, I would say. Mm. Winners, you could also put Carlos Sainz, even though he did lose a lot of race pace and didn't finish how he was hoping. But I mean, he had such a good qualifying. I guess you could put him in the winners. But I I know Liam had a really good qualifying too. But you still have to put him in the losers after a bad start and just finishing that low. Pierre Gasly, which wasn't his fault. We did see that little crash with, I believe it was Gabby at turn one. Um, who's some other losers? I would, uh, Charles picked up some pace, a little bit of pace, so I wouldn't consider him a loser. Oscar also picked up a little bit of race pace, even though Charles, we kind of do expect it to be a little better than that. I don't think it was his fault. Just, you know, in a bad car, in a very bad car. I guess that's really it that I have for that. Driver of the day. I originally gave it to Max when I was there. I think you have to give it to Kimmy, man. Kimmy's what an impressive performance. Even Max was shocked when Kimmy said that he finished P4. Now on the podium. Ended up being on the podium at the end of the day. So yeah. Now as far as Vegas goes, Vegas itself, while I was there, it's so. Vegas Grand Prix weekend is sick. We have all the pop-ups. I went to the Lando pop-up, went to the Lewis pop-up. Been to the Lewis pop-up past 2 years. Ferrari had a they have a big display at the Puma store on the Vegas Strip. Charles and Lewis were in there. I didn't get to see them, but they were in there. Um, what else is going on? Daniel Ricciardo's pop-up, his Enchante pop-up. I got this while I was there. I did miss Ricardo though. I He was there right after I left because we were kind of in a rush. The F1 hub store, there was a 4 hour line to get in, so I didn't get to make it this year. This is the first year that I didn't make it to that. The F1 arcade, they were fully booked. I mean, the F1 Vegas weekend, there's a lot of people that go in for it, like more than people realize. So everything kind of gets booked out and reserved really quick. So if you do plan on going to F1 Vegas, jump on everything early, make your reservations early, really set out a game plan and get there many days early because it gets crowded and the lines get very long because it also always falls on the US Thanksgiving weekend or the week before Thanksgiving in the US. So everybody's traveling for the holidays. It gets rough. It gets rough, but it's super sick. So I definitely recommend checking it out one year because, like I said, you'll love it. There's F1 activities everywhere. But I mean, yeah, not too much for this episode. Just kind of recapping the race, just a short, quick recap. So I guess that'll do it for this one. We will be back for Qatar. So I won't see you guys before Thanksgiving or after yeah, I won't see you guys again before Thanksgiving because it's in like 2 days or a day. I don't know when this will be uploaded. So if you're in the US and you're celebrating Thanksgiving this week, I'm not sure if any other countries are, but have a good Thanksgiving. And yeah, catch you guys next week with the Qatar preview. Let's get the season going. Championship race is getting fun.